Hello and welcome to the SuperShow podcast. Today I am your host Alex Jones to talk to you about video games and all the big news of the week, which has been pretty dry, unfortunately. But we've managed to squeeze some blood out of the stone, and there are a few stories that, of course, we want to talk about. But as always, joining me here to talk about the news, talk about the hot trends and topics in the world of gaming, it's the one and only Jamie.
Well, I don't know how hot they necessarily are, to be honest. Even squeezing blood from a stone sounds like a somewhat easier activity than we've had on our plates for the past hour or so, trying to put together something of a podcast document. But here we are. The show must go on, Jonesy. That's what they say, right?
The show must go on, indeed. And before the show does go on, Jamie, I'm going to give a little shout out to all of the eager beavers who have joined us in the chat, ready for the beginning of the podcast live on YouTube. Let's give a shout out to Magni, Shell Shock, The Funky Penguin, Classy Cat, and I Eat Cheese, and Aim Nestus. Aim Nestus is currently listening to us in the toilet stall at work. So big shout out. Big shout for you.
The question is, Jonesy, headphones in or just full blast Super Show in the toilet cubicle? What do you reckon?
Full blast. So yeah. Hopefully people think that there's multiple people in one stall and they kick it down and go, "What are you doing?" And they realise that you're just having a shit, listening to a podcast.
Either there are 3 video game fans doing cocaine in that stall, or that's like the world's nerdiest threesome. Something's happening in there. However you slice it, Aim Nestus is a part of it.
Absolutely. We are a video game podcast, if you couldn't guess already. We are on YouTube at Super Show Pod and X. We're also all over the major podcasting platforms. I'm talking Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts. Jamie looks unhappy because I didn't call it Twitter. Well, I've made the transition.
I still don't know how I feel about hearing the word X out loud in the context of referring to the artist formerly known as Twitter. I just don't know how I feel about it.
I did hear someone refer to it as, I can't remember now. It was like an amalgamation of X and Twitter, and it didn't sound good. I can't remember what it was.
If you hang on, because it doesn't in Chinese doesn't X sometimes become like a CH or a SH kind of sound? So couldn't it theoretically be shitter?
Shitter, maybe, or chitter.
Shitter seems more appropriate because that is actually what the website has been since its rebranding for the most part.
I'm kind of torn. I like some aspects of it and I hate others. And I don't like, for example, how it always forces me onto my For You page. And one of the reasons being is that I just then spend an hour scrolling through people that I don't even follow. And just going through it.
That's the thing. I hate algorithms because of how often they work. Is what Twitter reminds me. I'm also in two minds. Like, it's one of those things where every time something goes horribly wrong on X, now of course Elon has made himself a very easy target because of the amount that he has ripped up that website from what were its roots to make it what it is today. But at the same time, and I'm going to have to say this very quietly, there is an element of it that I don't respect, but that fascinates me. When given the percentage of the workforce that he was able to eradicate almost immediately, and yet still keep it functional, and slowly but surely also make the changes that he wanted to make, whether they were a good idea or a bad idea. At least it's all happening, And yes, he's wiped billions and billions of dollars off the value of the company and so on and so forth.
But it was so overvalued in the first place.
That's the problem. That's why he didn't want to buy it, right? That's why he tried to back out.
That's the thing. I think something that people forget is they're like, oh, he reduced the value of it. Like, no, it was already not worth anywhere near like what they said, but it was so overhyped and overpriced that but then he stitched himself up. He shouldn't have had such a big mouth. Then he wouldn't have had to buy it. But no, look, he's a businessman. He's making business moves. He's making money moves. Whatever. I'm not a CEO. I don't really care. Crack on. Something I do care about though, Jamie, is that if you want to watch us or listen to us, I should say, somewhere else, not just on podcasting platforms or on YouTube, you can also check us out over at paisleyradio.com. Thursdays 10 p.m, repeated Mondays at 10 p.m. So there's loads of ways to check us out and loads of ways to enjoy the gaming goodness that is the Super Show podcast. Shall we crack on with our first story?
Yeah, no time like the present.
This is not quite like the thing that we normally do because we're going to give a little back look. That's not even a word, is it? I was going to say backlog and a look back, and it came out as back look. Let's just have a little look back. A back look. Let's have a little look.
Is that
back.
what you call it when you check your rearview mirror when you're reversing, Josie? I'm just gonna have a quick back look before I reverse into this parking space.
When my parking sensors aren't working, I have to do a back look. There is one thing where that's legit. If you ever go rock climbing, right, and you're at the top,
right,
and you're coming down, you don't call it
Okay.
climbing down. You call it down climbing.
Ah, why have they done that?
I don't know. It was, yeah, the first time I heard that, I thought I was hearing wrong. But yeah, no, they're saying you're going to down climb. And you're like, do you mean climb down? No,
Oh,
they meant
fine.
down
Are
climb.
you gonna back drive?
Yeah.
Are you
Back
gonna
look.
back walk? Back look? Yeah, I don't like it.
Anyway,
But
let's...
then yeah, I don't like rock climbing anyway. Bouldering.
Fair.
It's for virgins. So
Bit of bouldering.
sorry.
Let's take a back look at Minecraft. Because this week it was announced that Minecraft had broken 300 million sales since its release, and we thought no time like the present to talk about the biggest game of all time. It has been for a long time, but the 300 million sales target is obviously notable because of its girth. Yeah, it's 300 million, but it's also notable because it is now over 100 million sales ahead of the next best-selling title, which is kind of ridiculous. That it has made that much of a headway. And one of the reasons I wanted to give it a little shout as well, not only because I played it back in 2011 when it first dropped, when it was still, before it was even officially released, I believe, but also because one of the amazing things I think about Minecraft is that it is an indie game. If you, in most senses, it was originally made, conceived and built by one man who started a company then, obviously, to help him build it. But let's go through it.
Let's do it.
By go through it, I mean the back look at Minecraft. So, in case you didn't know, Minecraft began as a side project for Marcus Persson, also known as Notch, in early 2009, whilst he was working at King. He then developed Minecraft between 2009 2011. It was obviously released in multiple forms where he was putting out like dev versions of the game. He was putting out alphas, betas, and then it finally released the classic version of Minecraft, which came out in 2011. So I remember playing it back then.
Yeah.
And I think I probably bored people with me saying how great this little game was. When did you jump on the Minecraft train?
I jumped on fairly early as well. I can remember I used to watch this YouTube channel, and it would have been at some point in that 2009 to 2011 bracket while the game was still essentially being developed. Although I guess it was, it was being developed for a long time, but it was when it was in that really early stage. They were called like NoobTube or something like that.
Oh,
With an E at the end. Are you Oh no, you're back.
Something's gone broke.
I'm back if you're back.
I am back, but there is a problem. An error occurred. Tell you what, let's flick over to our little placeholder thing. Oh no, it says that we're streaming. I just can't see us.
Maybe I can find us.
Let us know in chat if you can still see us, because my my stream window is saying that we are.
I think we're live.
Okay. Then let's crack on. Oh, you froze, Jamie. Apparently that was it, but we are back. Oh, I can't see that we're actually live in my little window now, so I'm just going to have to go with it. Okay. I think
that's part of the fun, though, Teddy. I've always had you down as an adrenaline junkie. Some people jump out of planes and climb mountains. You just go live on YouTube without actually being able to see whether your stream is still up or not.
Okay, well,
that's all the excitement you need.
This is peak adrenaline for me right now. This is as exciting as my life gets. That my little window just says error, but apparently people are saying they can still see us.
I trust them.
There we go. I trust them too. But yeah, those. I remember you saying about the YouTube channel in those early days, because I think that's where a lot of people found out about it, right?
Yeah, there were these two like middle-aged dudes, an Asian guy and a white guy, and they would always sit in front of these huge walls of wine, and they would pour themselves a glass of wine and talk about games. And I don't know why it sticks out in my memory, but it was one of the, with hindsight, probably some of the first gaming media I consumed on YouTube. And I remember one of them going to a convention or something and coming back and describing Minecraft. And that was the first memory I have, is trying to visualize Minecraft based on someone's description of it, but having no frame of reference for what it actually looked like, and just my imagination running wild. Which I guess in theory was appropriate, because that's fundamentally what a lot of the promise that Minecraft ultimately delivered on, was a sense of freedom. But that brings me to my second memory of Minecraft, which is thinking, wow, this is incredible. This is the hot new thing. I've got to get on this, getting on it, and immediately going, well, now what? And
what do I do with this?
yeah, teenage Jamie not really vibing particularly well with what is essentially now, direction, a sense of directionless gameplay that in some respects has become mainstream in recent years, but at the time was a little bit jarring. Um, and but a lot has changed in the years since.
That's
That's for
so
sure.
true. You say that, and I must admit I hadn't even thought of it like that at the time. There weren't many games where it was kind of like, or that I remember anyway, that was sort of like just do whatever you want, like a true sandbox open world, like go for it. And that was one of the sort of amazing things about Minecraft was it was very. It was just so open. It was just do whatever. And I didn't even know there was a game to complete. I don't think there was back in the early days. I don't think there was any such thing as the
Right.
Ender Dragon. And maybe even like the Nether wasn't even a thing. But obviously, since then it has grown, has expanded. They've added so much to the game, and it has gone from strength to strength. We were just going to touch on a couple of the few bullet points around through the development. We're not going to linger on it for too long because I'm sure people know a lot about Minecraft, and they don't need us to tell them. But yeah, so after Notch left King, blimey, my memory went there. He actually went into another company. I cannot remember for the life of me what they're called. Oh, J Album. I couldn't even find it there. J Album,
J
where he
Album.
worked for a while, but then he left to go full time and to full time develop Minecraft and launch it. So that's when he set up Mojang. Mojang. What do you say? I've always said Mojang or Mo. Well, actually, I haven't. I think I used to say Mojang. I think I'll go Mojang.
I've heard both. It was definitely Mojang for a very long time, and then I want to say I might be wrong on this. Someone in the chat might have to correct me, but I think employees of that company, whose name we're talking about, have themselves gone back and forth at times. I explicitly remember watching an E3 or something like that and hearing Mojang and going, "Oh, I guess I've got to change the way I say that word." And then a few years later, the same people being out on stage and calling it Mojang. So fuck knows. I'm not the authority on it.
It's
Where's
like
any Swedes in the chat?
any Swedes. It's like the GIF and GIF, and we've now in the UK we've currently got Skoda and Skoda. They're literally putting out adverts going.
Oh
This is
no,
how you say
I've never.
this.
Yeah, but then I guess it's the same with Porsche and Porsche, right? But it's like
Hyundai, because I've got a Hyundai. They now have released an advert saying it's not Hyundai, it's Hyundai.
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 That's just. But then it's like, then you get into weird stuff. It's like, are you meant to say words the way that they are said in their native languages or country of origin? Like, I'm going to tell you, as we live extremely close to it, some people fucking swim there. That's how close we are. But if you walk around London calling it Paris, people are going to give you a slap. It's Paris. Like so.
Yeah.
So at what point can you just anglicize it because that's what makes sense to do?
Yes, no, absolutely. Like at some point, you just got to go with it. I'm being told in the chat it's Mojang, and I also mispronounced Marcus Person. But you've written it in a chat, William Stark. I don't know how I'm supposed to say it still. What did I say? I can't even remember what I said. Anyway, but let's crack on. So this is an interesting fact about Mojang, which I don't remember. I remember a little bit, but I don't remember all the ins and outs of this. And this is so in 2014, once they're doing really well, the game's massive, and then there gets a problem with end user license agreements because basically what happened was there were a bunch of private servers set up. There were mods that you could access and you could use, but some of the servers were having had mods where you could effectively pay to win, and you could pay for like buffs in game and things. And Mojang didn't like that, so they clamped down and they basically said, we don't want that. We don't want people doing pay to win. We don't mind if you charge entry to get into the server. We don't mind if you charge for cosmetics, but we don't want people to have sort of like a mismatched experience once they're in the game. So they were going to come down hard on that. The players responded quite harshly because they'd been playing for a while and had no problems with this, and they thought it was great. And this was the point at which Notch actually tweeted out and said, does anyone want to buy Mojang? Because he was kind of done with the whole EULA thing and was a bit annoyed about it. But which is actually really cool because then apparently Mojang got a bunch of calls saying, is he serious? Yeah, we'll buy it. And so then this led to a couple of offers. So we're talking Activision, Blizzard, EA, and of course Microsoft offered a bunch of money for the company. Really want to get their hands on the Microsoft IP and on the Mojang IP. And as we all now know, Microsoft won out at the end of the day, and they bought everything for $2.5 billion, which is absolutely insane when you think how the game started out, where it ended up, and how loaded Marcus Persson became. So that is pretty epic, isn't it?
Like, do you remember I'm pretty sure it was the same year in 2014. Obviously, I don't know how much of the 2.5 billion he saw in total, but one of the first big extravagant purchases he made with his newfound wealth was that Beverly Hills mansion that cost, I think it was $70 million. And apparently, and again, I don't know if this is just like an internet rumor that's now just been cast into like myth and legend, and now people believe it. But supposedly, the reason it cost $70 million is because he was in a bidding war with Beyonce and Jay-Z, which I do love as a little bit of trivia about the guy who made Minecraft. But yeah, fuck it. Like, why not? You know.
Yeah, no, why not? If you've got that much money, if you just sold something and you've made that much money, why not? But it's it's a pretty epic story. And I think the reason it's so cool is because I think a lot of people that get into like game development, especially if you want to make games for yourself, you know, and you think you've got a good idea, it's kind of like the golden story of anyone can do this, anyone can make something, and it can become absolutely huge. You can start a company and sell that company and make $1 billion, which is kind of insane, kind of crazy.
And I also just love the fact that Minecraft almost exists as this testament to kind of that even when it feels like a certain idea either is off the table or that just must be, given the number of video games that have been made and how long video games have been made for, that an idea must be off the table, that's sometimes not always the case. And there's like a kind of a baseline logic to Minecraft that so many people can understand and appreciate at all ages, which is part of why it's so successful, that you hear and you just go, okay, but yeah, like what makes it different? What makes it unique? Like we all grew up playing with Lego. Like we understand like the fundamentals of like building block design, and we can see how you can extrapolate from that and apply it to, essentially the contents of a randomly generated world and so on and so forth. But there is something about the way that Minecraft comes together in a game and that je ne sais quoi that it has that communicates with so many people and so many audiences and so many different demographics and has stood the test of time that, there have been lots of Minecraft imitators, lots of pretenders to the throne. Some of them have been very good and extremely popular. Terraria, which to its credit, eventually became a very different thing and is now a very different game to Minecraft and remains one of the highest rated games on Steam. But like, I still prefer Minecraft, and I had my biggest Minecraft moment of my life in 2020, like the first year of lockdown, at the age of 27. And by that point, it was a 9-year-old game. Like I said, I was a 27-year-old man, and I rediscovered Minecraft in a way that I never had before, and it's really cool. And I think the other thing that's really interesting is that you, in this little document you put together, you noted some of the spin-offs that have been born from the Minecraft franchise, if you will. And I think the fact that you can look through all of those and say, well, most of them aren't outright disasters. They are all reminders that there is like something special about Minecraft in and of itself that you can't just replicate, no matter how many smart people you put in a room to come up with a way to kind of feed off that success that it's had. It was a once in a lifetime thing.
That's such a good point. Like, if you think it's funny, I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago because my kids love Minecraft. They like playing sort of all different mods and doing like really weird, crazy stuff that obviously I never did back when I was sort of playing it 10 years ago. And my dad was watching them play it, and he said, "What is this? Why are the graphics so rubbish?" And I said, "This is Minecraft." And my dad was like, "Oh, this is not quite as good as some of the other games I've seen. I bet this is like a cheaper game, like a cheapy game, isn't it?" And I said, "Dad, do you know how much the man made who sold this to Microsoft?" And he was like, "What? How much did he make?" And I told him, and he was absolutely flabbergasted.
Yeah.
So it's mad when you think there are these really amazing concepts and people come up with these really intricate games that take years to make and then just don't take off. And yeah, Minecraft was seems like such a simple idea, but so many possibilities, so much modding. So I mean, I think that is the the epitome of Minecraft now are the mods. Like people play it to play mods and to play in certain servers and things.
Sure.
It's definitely become a thing in its own right. You know, it's like almost like an ecosystem, right? It's not actually just as I've listed down here so that we've got the different spin-offs. So like Minecraft, which is a 2011 top-down 2D game, Minecraft Stories, which was the Telltale 2015, and Season 2, which was 2017 games, Minecraft Earth, which was an AR sandbox in 2019, Dungeons, obviously 2020, and then Minecraft Legends, which came out earlier this year. But I think if you tried to put every mod, every different type of game you could play, it'd be tens of thousands, or probably it's so many different things that you can do in there now. So yeah, it's absolutely gargantuan.
It is, and it's funny. I lose interest when you start talking about some of those mods. Like I've seen some of them, and I think experimented with a few in a kind of a very loose way. But I was like, no, there's something nice about the simplicity of the old school Minecraft experience. Not even going down the kind of the route of completing Minecraft, as you mentioned earlier, and trying to find and kill the Ender Dragon. Like I don't even fuck with that stuff. I just like having a space and building out that space and getting familiar with the world around me and and I don't know, literally as the name would suggest, mining for research. Like it's the simple pleasures, James. It's the simple things.
I think you would get down with Pixelmon. I reckon
Pixelmon. Oh, that's going to be a Pokemon.
It's a Pokemon mod.
Minecraft. Yeah. I just don't care that much. Like I don't.
Fair.
This is the thing. Like Minecraft, I'm going to almost contradict myself here because Minecraft did make a very solid, like base level foundation for other things to build on top of, and mods are a perfect example of how you can take Minecraft and turn it into something completely different or unrecognizable, but still do so very successfully. And yet at the same time, I don't need, nor necessarily even want Minecraft to be anything that it isn't already. And I'll like, especially when you get into mods of like, what if Minecraft was like Pokemon? And I just kind of sit there going, yeah, but at the moment, for me, Minecraft is like Minecraft and Pokemon is like Pokemon, and I have both those things already.
Why do I need them to meet?
Yeah. Yeah. And I was about to use a really bad example. I was about to try and think of an example of food and saying it's like someone going, what if pizza was a dessert? And then I realized that dessert pizza is really fucking nice because sometimes they just use Nutella instead of tomato sauce as like the spread, and then you're in real trouble. But the right kind of trouble, you know what I mean?
Yes.
A diabetic kind of trouble, if you will.
But well, hey, there you go. Anyway, there's our little back look at the what was the thing, the TV show that we used to have in the UK? Like, This Is Your Life. This is Minecraft. This is your life for 300 million sales. I should say, I don't think I mentioned. So the next biggest game, I said it was 100 million sales over the next biggest game. The next biggest game is GTA 5, is with 185 million sales. So that's insane. Like Minecraft's nearly doubled the sales of GTA 5, which is in the second spot of the most sold game, which is absolutely crazy, but fair play.
Is that with the asterisks of kind of like sales that we can track and quantify, in the sense that like Wikipedia at this stage, I think is probably has given up trying to keep track of how many copies of Tetris and across various platforms and stuff like that there are, including, I don't know, like weird free iOS knockoff versions and all that kind of shit.
It has to be, right? I don't think they could track it. Also, I imagine as well, there's got to be like free games that people manage to get hold of and play in different versions, as you've said, like Tetris, things like that. Over the years, if you added up all of those, I mean, you're probably in the billions. But yeah, how would you track it? So we're going with registered sales, however the hell they track it. The people with the numbers, they tell us what they are. So yeah, well done.
The basement dwellers who edit Wikipedia, who know all.
Who know all, indeed. Do you know there are some other people that know all, Jamie?
Yeah,
they know all because they're our patrons over at patreon.com. They're the ones with the inside edge. And I would like to talk about them right now because they're epic and they keep our channel going. They keep the lights on. They keep us coming back week after week. Genuinely, thank you very much to all of our patrons. There are some names on screen right now, but I would also like to read out some names. They are Aaron Cameron, Athletic Gravy, Brimstone, Ice Not Rock Salt, Jesper Camdown Nielsen, Pastors Guild, and the big dogs. I'm talking Bretzy, aka Shell Shock, Geometric Potter, Hacksaw McReed, Manuel Guerrero, and Peaswad. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for supporting our channel. Thank you for keeping us going. Our little train that could. keeping it chugging along the tracks.
Oh God, can it? I don't know. Maybe if you say so, I'll have to take your word for it.
It can at the moment. The old carriage on the back is getting lighter and lighter as we lose some of our cargo.
Our train is like Santa's sleigh in the film Elf, which is that it literally runs on belief. The more people who believe in the future of the Super Show podcast, the more juice we've got. Shall I tell a joke for the patrons?
Oh, please do.
As a little thank you.
Please do.
Okay, I saw this bloke Jonesy the other day. He was actually chatting up a cheetah of all things. I thought, God, he's trying to pull a fast one.
Very good, very good. So I think that should be a new feature. I think we should do a dad joke, I don't know what you call it. I mean, like a dad joke thing at some point.
I don't know. For anyone that wondering where this has come from, basically the way this podcast works, in sort of the half an hour to 45 minutes before we go live, Jonesy does an astronomical amount of work by creating thumbnails and setting up the live stream and making sure everything's going to work and that there are titles and that there are tags and that the people who join in the chat are meted and greeted and so on and so forth. And I sit here on a Discord call with Jonesy singing Christmas carols and on tonight was such an evening where I got a bit bored with the Christmas carols and found that you can play Discord sounds, and because of the way that we stream this show, that means the people at home would be able to hear them too. So I just told Jonesy, what did you say, like 9 or 10 jokes back to back before we started?
Yeah, more than that. It felt like about 20. Okay. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe there were 20. I don't know.
But no, I thought it was very good. And don't sell yourself short. The reason I spend longer doing more work is because it takes me longer, and you're much quicker than I am. So there we go. Don't sell yourself short at all.
Nah.
I'm going to have to give a little shout out, Jamie. I'm assuming this is for your epic joke. Randall Flagg has just super chatted us £5.
Oh wow! Well, thank you, Randall. Is there a message, or is it just?
I think it was purely because of your amazing joke. So there you go.
Oh wow!
Thank you very much.
Here's one for you, Randall. I rang up my local swimming baths the other day. I said, "Hello, is that the local swimming baths?" They said, "It depends where you're calling from."
That's just accurate. Is that even a joke?
Well, okay.
That would be an accurate way to respond, wouldn't it? Depends.
Okay. Well, what about the time when I went to the gym the other day? And I said to the gym instructor, "Can you teach me how to do the splits?" And they said, "Well, that depends how flexible you are." I said, "I can't do Tuesdays."
That was good. I like that.
Oh, Jonesy, I'm not even getting a laugh out of you anymore.
I was thinking as you were saying that if we did a try not to laugh, I don't think I'd be very good. And that was a little test bed to see if I could not. But I apologise.
I imagine you're doing a sound job so far of making me look like a right plank.
I was laughing on the inside. So yeah, there you go.
That's going to be the name of your memoir, isn't it? Laughing on the inside, the Alex Jones story.
I feel like I laugh externally a lot as well. I feel like I'm a happy, laughy person. But you know what? I don't want to hear more jokes out of you, Jamie. I want to hear what you've been playing this week.
Oh, okay.
That was a hard pivot.
Yeah, it's a hard pivot. A smarter person than me would have come up with jokes that I could make about the games I've been playing. I haven't been playing much. It does feel a little bit like it's like. It's odd to say this in the middle of October, given how busy a month it's been, but it is kind of, I think, for you and I, the calm before the storm. There is obviously a big release coming out imminently that we're going to be talking about shortly. Those of you who've seen the thumbnail of this live stream or video will know exactly what we're talking about. And I think not long after that, I've got Alan Wake 2, and those are both titles that I have pre-ordered digitally on my PlayStation 5, and so we'll have no choice but to play. And that basically meant that this week was about getting shit done. And the only thing that I got done that I wanted to briefly touch back on, because I have some slightly more, not necessarily a few more hot takes to offer, but my feelings on it are a little bit more well-rounded, and that's Assassin's Creed Mirage.
Yeah.
All I wanted to say was that I think Assassin's Creed Mirage is a solid game, and if you're looking for like a solid 7 or 8 out of 10 Assassin's Creed title, you're probably not going to be disappointed. But I talked a little bit last time about how I was worried that they were potentially underutilizing the character of Basim,
Yeah.
who is of course the protagonist in Mirage, and I think I described last week as having like some of the most rich and interesting kind of like narrative elements associated with him in the entire series history.
Because
And
obviously,
regrettably,
just in case people don't know, so because originally Mirage was going to be DLC for Valhalla, wasn't it? So it wasn't
indeed.
necessarily. Maybe they weren't planning on filling out that character as well and as more roundly as they could.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. So go on.
No, but see that therein almost lies the problem, because even if I gave them the benefit of the doubt and said, right, Mirage began life as Valhalla DLC, and as such, like maybe they're going to pad it out a little bit to make it run at least the 20 hours or however many they feel like it needs to last, and that means that the middle of the story is going to feel stretched or perhaps a bit meandering, but that the beginning and the end should still harken back to the original, elevator pitch for this DLC, and should therefore still deliver something meaningful on this character. And fundamentally, it doesn't. Like, what a lot of my disappointment was that once the Assassin's Creed Mirage has, it establishes its reason for existing, for want of a better way of putting it. It gives Basim something to do and something to focus on while he spends some time in Baghdad, and then, as you'd expect, gets towards the end of that journey, and it starts to reincorporate elements of Basim's broader character, his backstory, where he's going to end up because he's a major player in Valhalla. And I thought there were some really interesting opportunities to kind of make Mirage be that missing link in the arc for what is increasingly becoming one of the more important characters in Assassin's Creed lore, which I know most people don't care about, but I still do just a little bit. And I think that they really did nothing interesting with it at all, to the point where the next title could be another Basim-led game that immediately follows on from Valhalla. And if people ask me, do I need to play Mirage, I'd say no.
Okay. Do you think that's because the problem they've got is you already know where he ends up in Valhalla, so their hands were tied a little bit?
But given where he starts in Mirage, how he gets to where he is in Valhalla should have been so much more fascinating.
Right.
And it's one of those things, like, what's the expression where it's like, something happens very slowly, but then all at once, or something like that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's basically one of those where, like, Basim is just he's a street thief who ends up becoming an assassin. We all know that much. If you watched the trailer or seen the kind of the premise of Mirage, and he's broadly speaking, a goody two shoes assassin who does what he's told until they realized, oh shit, the game is ending, and he's not the Basim he is in Valhalla yet.
Right.
And they get from A to B in an astonishingly fast amount of time. Like, there's one point where a character, I don't want to delve into spoilers, but there's one part where, let's just say, a character who has been extremely tied and committed to a particular cause and has been willing to kill countless people in the name of that cause for an entire game's narrative, at one point is offered a different perspective on that cause or that individual's destiny by one of their own enemies, and in one or two lines of dialogue they begin questioning everything they've ever done with their entire life. And it's like,
I hate
you should
that.
be a little bit more committed to what the player has been doing vicariously through you for this entire thing. Just because a baddie turned around and said, haven't you ever wondered who you really are? What, and now you're just gonna like throw it all? I don't know. It's like, they had it felt like they worked themselves into a corner, then they had to work themselves back out of that corner,
Right.
and immediately jump from that new spot to so it's just a bit of a mess. And they try and spice it up with what at this point is one of the oldest like M. Night Shyamalan style twists in modern media history. Like, anyone who's seen, actually I can't say. But yeah, they pull some dumb shit, and it was also extremely predictable. Like, M. Night.
Right.
One thing I will say about M. Night Shyamalan stuff is that sometimes, more often than not, even, it catches me off guard, and I'm like, oh, like,
Didn't see that coming.
didn't see that coming. With
Not
this, I
so
was
here.
this was a major twist, and I kid you not, Jonesy, I was saying to myself going into the end of the game, if I haven't guessed the twist correctly, I'll be angry, because that twist is the only justification for how stupid some of this stuff is.
And it was right, and you were right.
And I was right. Yeah, I was
Okay.
right.
Interesting.
It's like it would be like, and this isn't the twist. I'm not spoiling it, I promise for anyone. But it would be like watching The Sixth Sense, and The Sixth Sense being handled so poorly that you're sat there halfway through the movie going, "If Bruce Willis isn't a ghost, then like this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen."
Right.
Do you know
And
what I mean?
yeah, and then they do it, and you go, okay, they did it.
And you're like, "Okay, at least I was right, and at least it makes things make
But
sense."
now you're annoyed because you were in the back of your mind, you're still hoping that there's a smarter twist you didn't see coming. But no, it was just
100%.
the obvious twist that you did see coming. Okay. No, I
Yeah.
totally get where you're coming from. It's interesting because so with AC Mirage, I do really want to play it. I didn't feel any need to play it like now, given you know Spider-Man coming out and a bunch of other games like recently that I've been playing. But I will say that a lot of the stuff I've seen on social media, like shorts and little clips of the game, definitely has me thinking that I'm missing out to some degree. Like, it looks really nice, some of the stuff I've seen. Some of the the assassinations look really nice. Some of the abilities you unlock do seem like they've moved a fair amount in that way in the game.
They've definitely moved in that direction, but I would say, like, don't push it. You know, every now and then a game comes along and it's critically acclaimed and everyone kind of unanimously agrees, like, hey, you know, stop what you're doing, put something down, put the book down, you know, pause the film, go and play this fucking video game. Like, you need Assassin's Creed Mirage isn't those. Assassin's Creed Mirage is a game that becomes easier to recommend to people when they have a hankering for some Assassin's Creed in their life.
Right.
So
it sounds
if you're
to
at that
me,
point, then go for it. But if you're not, then you can wait.
It sounds to me like the perfect kind of Christmas period game where you've got a couple of weeks off and you've played a couple of games and you're like, I'm sat around, I'm full of turkey, I've got a glass of wine on the go, and I just fancy playing something, you know, something familiar but cool that I don't feel like I have to rush. Which is usually Call of Duty for me, to be fair, that time of year.
But yeah, I think it will be for me as well, actually, because this year's Call of Duty is like a mid-November joint, so we'll see. But yeah, AC Mirage, like, I think by the nature of how narratives are constructed, Jonesy, their endings are usually the last things you see, and so in that sense, it has left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, and that's what I wanted to get across. But I have to defer to what I said at the top of that section, which is that fundamentally it is still a solid 7 or 8 out of 10 Assassin's Creed game, just with some shit that annoyed me. And that's fine.
Fair. Well, I'll keep it very brief for me this week. The only thing I've actually played was after some excellent advice to try out the demo from RoboCop.
Oh yes, Rogue City.
Rogue City. I did indeed do that, and it was exactly as you described. So I'm not gonna take up anyone's time with going too heavy on it. I do love what they've done. How faithfully they've stuck to that RoboCop look and feel. I think if you are into 80s action films like me, not only will you like love the fact that you get to delve into that, but you'll also suddenly think, as I started to do after I played the demo, like, damn, I just wish they would do this with every 80s action film. Just have a 5-hour game where you can just be, you know, whatever character from the 80s and just like have a laugh, have a blast. It lends itself really well. RoboCop, obviously, it's perfect for a first person sort of like you said, slow, methodical, pop in people's heads sort of first person shooter. That's exactly what it is. The sound effects, the voice acting's great. Everything was good.
I'm wondering two things now. First of all, has this demo and your feeling around the game like moved it up to a day one purchase for you?
No.
It's not. Okay, maybe like, is it wait for a sale? Is it?
It's a maybe it comes to Game Pass, or sale maybe, or maybe, do you know what? Maybe not even a sale, but maybe just like a couple of months after release, and I'll say to myself, I'd really like to play some more of that RoboCop game. And it's on. This is how I don't even know how much it would be, but like you said, but I definitely don't want it to be a 18-hour long extravaganza. I think the length it's going to be, I think it's like 5 to 8 hours or something. I can't remember what you said.
I hope so. No, I don't know. That's almost what I hope it is, because I don't know how much. I don't know how long I could play a game like that.
I could not stick with that for more than say 5 hours. I'm talking like 1.5 hours of getting into it, 2 to 3 hours of enjoying it, and then wrapping it up. Like, let's wrap this up. because that is a slow paced, methodical walking around like AI just jumping out at you shooting, and you're just going head pop, head pop, head pop, head pop. It's
Yeah.
not the most in depth shooter that I've ever played.
No, far from it.
Nice, but no fun. But yeah, very cool, very nostalgic. Ticks a lot of those boxes. Very nicely made from what I've played.
I have something else that I now need to ask you as well, just
Right.
because you referenced it. Your top 3 picks for, let's say, 70s, 80s, and 90s action movies to get the RoboCop Rogue City treatment. You get 3 choices. What are you going for?
Some of them, okay. Some of them I'll leave out because we've already got them as games. So like Alien,
Okay.
Alien Fireteam. I think we played with Steph before, and you get that.
Well, I could give you the option of going back across that territory if you think you have a pitch that better suits it, or if you didn't like what came before.
No, see,
Like
I liked
Fireteam
that.
Elite was great, but
I thought that was cool. Maybe so. I loved Alien versus Predator, the game back in the day. And I was blown away by how good I thought that game looked and played when it came out. And this is the '90s that I played that. But I would like to see a game where you get to play as Predator, made with that sort of RoboCop treatment. Starship Troopers for me is such an easy one. Give me that on a PlayStation 5 or a modern like PC build of a really nice looking game. That I just think that'd be fun, like epic fun to play, with mates online. That'd be wicked. What else would I want to play? Maybe I used to quite like the old Terminator games. Like Terminator 2, the old arcadey style ones. So something like that might be fun, but then again, that's a little bit close to RoboCop, so maybe not. Maybe I would go with. Do you know? Okay, I don't know how it would work as a game, but like something like Demolition Man would be quite fun.
I was waiting for you to say Demolition Man. I also don't know what the kind of the hook would be, but it is a ripe piece of source material for something.
Because you could have loads of melee combat, and he's just got the glow rod, and he's like fighting hand to hand, and then you like kabunk, and just
like maybe like
out.
Something like quite like simple and short, like Sifu was, but with a demolition, but Demolition Manified.
Yes, and then the whole game is melee combat, and then the last level you bust into the museum, you get the guns, and you just get to go ham. That'd be wicked.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be cool. Can I kind of throw out a few other shouts out there?
Yeah,
for you,
of course.
So you're thinking, what about well, actually, I was about to throw a developer out there, but I'm not sure if that would turn you on or put you off. I was thinking, what about giving From Software the Highlander license?
That would be pretty sick.
Giving CD Projekt Red the Blade Runner license.
They would be all over that.
There's a few more Arnie ones. Obviously, we've had plenty of Terminator games over the year, but the Running Man and Commando.
Running Man, if you could make Running Man somehow make that a service game with like online multiplayer elements, there's something in that. Or asymmetric, maybe like an asymmetric game where someone gets to be the who's the guy, the governor, the American governor who was in Running Man, who was like one of the big baddie at the end of that.
Was it Gus?
No. It was because of the V. Oh, he's in loads of stuff.
Begins with a V. Jesse Ventura.
I can't
know Jesse Ventura.
If you could have an asymmetric game with Jesse Ventura as like the bad guy, and then you had a load of people who are playing different Running Men characters, I think that would be sick. That would be really fun.
What about, like, how we're getting into the stage now where, and don't get me wrong, we all played Titanfall 2, and so we know it was doable prior, but you know how people are talking about how SSDs allow you to do stuff like having 2 versions of a world that exist simultaneously, and you can flick back and forth between the 2.
Yeah. And
again, I know you don't need an SSD to do it. So many games have done that, but something like that with They Live, where like you're instantly loading into different versions of
that'd be very cool.
Yeah.
So, someone in chat said Gremlins. That would be pretty cool.
Gremlins,
Gremlins game. Yeah.
Yeah, Viva Pinata, but Gremlins. I don't know how that would actually work, but yeah. Escape from New York, Cobra, Bloodsport, Beverly Hills Cop.
I feel like a lot of these sorts of games, the problem they have is if you wanted to actually, sorry, with these films even, if you wanted to make games out of them, you're talking like Last of Us level production values to get a decent game, which is why the RoboCop
Yeah.
game lends itself so well, is because it's such a simple concept. Which is why I think like Starship Troopers, and I think someone else in chat said Starship Troopers Extermination is in early access. I haven't even heard of that, so that is epic.
Yeah.
But a game like that just lends itself to video. A film like that lends itself to video games. A lot of these other ones, so like I say Demolition Man, but realistically, imagine they tried to make Demolition Man the game, and unless they did like you said and made a Sifu style, short melee combat game, it's going to be too tough. No one's going to make
feel
it.
like there is maybe a bit of a trend of that emerging when you consider, like, we talked about RoboCop, we talked about Starship Troopers. Mike Bithell made that weird kind of like a visual novel Tron game, right? Was that a visual?
The most recent one.
Yeah, that was fairly recent. And there's also, do you remember from the last Annapurna Interactive Showcase, they revealed that the first ever Annapurna in-house developed game is a Blade Runner game. Do you remember that trip? That was from so stuff is happening where people are going to these licenses and saying, hey, we can take like this sort of triple I like level of game development that's sort of like been established over the past decade or two, and apply maybe not quite as popular as they once were licenses to that framework, and maybe get something out of it. I don't know.
They'll be the first completely AI games, is when you can just feed in everything that's been written about them online and the film itself, and then tell an AI to make the game, and they'll just like pop you out a fully built game with slightly wonky looking hands and some dodgy mechanics at the other end, and they'll be like, there you go, there's your 80s movie game, be happy. And you'll be like, oh, all right. Maybe they'll finally make a good ET game.
I mean, yeah, again, I don't know what that looks like, but I could believe it.
Yeah, me either. I don't think there is a good game in there, but you never know. You never know.
Again, you'd have to rip off something else, but I'm trying to think, and I can't. Excitebike.
Shall we move on to talk about something which is, well, Jamie, should be very good. Not an ET bad, but a very good. And
What you're trying to say, Jonesy, is we're about to talk about a video game that won't have countless copies of it buried in the middle of a desert at some point.
Absolutely not, and it won't decimate the gaming industry for decades to come. We're, of course, talking about Spider-Man 2, which comes out on Friday, which is in 4 days' time, as we're recording this. It comes out on Friday, the 20th, but the reviews are out today, and at the moment, it is sitting at a very healthy 91 on Metacritic after 120 critic reviews. One of the reasons I think wanted to talk about this, and I did a really bad explanation of saying to Jamie my setup for this, was because there's been some interesting argy-bargy around Spider-Man, I think, after Starfield came out, and people sort of suggesting that it was a little tired and not pushing the envelope enough. And interestingly, some of the lines from critics, whilst positive on the whole with the reviews, we have actually seen some of this bear out in some of the reviews. Like, we've had reviews that say this game is fantastic, this is the best game I played on the PlayStation 5. There are other reviewers which have kind of said that actually Insomniac Games have maybe played it a little too careful, and they've effectively made a very good sequel, but they haven't done as much as they should have done with the franchise going forward, which is interesting. Where do you sit on this, Jamie? Are you hoping for a pushing the envelope game, something totally different, or are you perfectly happy with an iteration on that Spider-Man Miles Morales?
Ah, man. I feel like there are two voices in my head battling out. There's there's the video game I want Spider-Man 2 to be, or the kind of sequel I guess I want it to be, and there's the kind of sequel it needs to be, or inevitably will be, just based on the circumstances under which it was made. The speed of the turnaround, how busy Insomniac kind of are, and also the fact that, like, when you make something like the original Spider-Man, I'm sure you have lots of ideas, and there are lots of things left on the cutting room floor for ways of improving that formula and ways of like re-engaging players and trying to build on some of the components of that game that were perhaps not received quite as well. But at the same time, you can't reinvent the wheel. And sometimes when I think back to we talked about this loads on the podcast, and I try not to get too sidetracked as I do it. But when I think back to like the previous generation, especially as game development times were a lot faster, and so studios could churn out more games, and sequels came out at a greater clip. There were lots of new IPs at the beginning of that generation that then turned into series, and the defining games of those series were the sequels. And we talk about them all the time, like the weird phenomenon about how Uncharted 2 was most people's favorite Uncharted. Mass Effect 2 was most people's favorite Mass Effect. And Dead Space 2 and Dead Rising 2 and there are lots and lots of examples. BioShock 2 is one of the only examples of like something that doesn't fit that formula. There were Saints Row 2. Like there were a lot of really good twos. But a lot of those cases, especially when it came to, and again, some people are going to disagree with me here, but especially when it came to, what's it like? I don't know, like Saints Row and Mass Effect and Uncharted. There were problems with hindsight with the first, like they were very much kind of not rough around the edges, but those first attempts at making entry points into those series were like they were a bit unpolished. Like the developer hadn't really seen, and the full promise and the full potential of those games hadn't really been seen out yet. And why I think so many games were Assassin's Creed 2. How did I forget that? Like a lot of those games were like Assassin's Creed is maybe like the perfect example of like something like you could totally see what it's getting at. And all Ubisoft did would have to kind of like do was pick up the slack and make something that kind of was really sort of like firing on all cylinders for the sequel. Which, don't get me wrong, is always going to be easier said than done. But a lot of developers that generation were able to do it. Spider-Man, for as much as we were looking at earlier, it did end up at an 87 on Metacritic. This is the Spider-Man that came out in 2018. It didn't really feel like one of those games because in many respects you look at the traversal, especially the web swinging, you look at the combat and how fluid that felt, you look at the versions that they were able to create of their version of Peter Parker and their version of Otto Octavius and the whole surrounding cast and crew, and you kind of looked and you're like, do you know what, Insomniac haven't done a huge amount wrong here. And the things that they did do wrong, or maybe didn't quite nail, were the open world, some elements of kind of repetitive side content, and not really being able to take advantage of that space. But then, by the same token, while that was one of the major complaints, it was also a game where the swinging was so fun that a ridiculous number of people kept swinging even after the credits had rolled and got platinum trophies, according to the percentages. So it was swings and roundabouts, and I can see why, like Spider-Man. And going into now Spider-Man 2, it wasn't quite a series or original title that was positioned in some of the same ways we talk about games from yesteryear to build upon and make something radically new. And in that sense, I kind of had my expectations in check, and I just wanted something that just I kind of was willing to accept more of the same coming into this, not least of all because I was excited about where I knew Insomniac would be able to take some of the narrative hooks that they set up in the previous two games, the idea of Peter and Miles working together, and obviously like we've had all the teasers up to this point with regards to Venom, with regards to the symbiote suit, Peter's changing personality as a result of the symbiote suit. There were enough hooks there that fuck it, Jonesy, if you'd offered me like something that was identical to Miles Morales but with that new narrative, I'd have played it. I needed to see where it went, and so everything else is a bonus. And when I think about the possibilities of the symbiote suit, when I think about the wings that they've got as like a new sort of element to add to the traversal, which was I think already best in class, I'm really quite satisfied with the package it sounds like we're gonna get.
I am as well.
I can't even remember your question.
It was what were you sort of hoping for?
You need to get better at interrupting me, Jonesy.
Sorry,
I just lose my way. I apologize.
I was enjoying your what you were saying. I think I completely agree with you. Because I think for me, like realistically, the takeaway from Spider-Man and Miles Morales was like I actually loved the games. I love what I was doing. I love the mechanics. I loved how they played. I loved how they felt. I loved so much about them. But some of the things that I wanted to change would have literally been. I feel like the narratives kind of just lost me a little bit. They weren't that engaging, like the main story arcs and things. But that's always a problem with like superhero games because at the end of the day, they are comic books. Comic book inspired, and they have to they follow this kind of odd, bizarre narratives that aren't that they're not like they're not like the most thrilling when it comes to sort of like what's happening to people and what's going on. Don't get me wrong, like very cool characters, but the way they introduce them and you get to interact with them maybe could have been a little bit better. I think they maybe did. They just needed to do like a bit more for me with some of the main story quest stuff. But the side missions, the way the combat and everything, I thought was really cool. The step up when you play Miles Morales and the gadgets and stuff and his powers, I thought were very cool. So it's like, to me, yeah, they don't need to do a massive amount. They just need to have a good, engaging main story. They just need to chuck in a few more powers, and it needs to look slick as fuck. Because it's on the PlayStation 5 completely. It's a brand new game. It needs to look amazing. It needs to feel amazing. And apparently, by what some of the reviewers have said, they've made a real good use of the PlayStation 5 hardware. They've, like you said, they've got more. I'm sure people remember, but when they first brought out the PlayStation 5, one of the things they talked about was how Insomniac Games kept referencing the fact that the hardware, the hard drive in the PlayStation 4, was a limiting factor on the swing speed for Spider-Man because they couldn't load in the assets quick enough in order to have him swing faster. So then, of course, the question becomes, well, so how fast can you swing now? Or how fast can you move around the city now?
I think it's the wings now that kind of are taking up that mantle. I don't know how much footage of the game you've seen.
I've seen some
of the speeds, some of the speeds that you can pick. It got to the point where actually, I don't know if you watched or listened to SkillUp's review yet, but he actually says that for as well integrated as they are and for as good as they feel, the web wings, I think they might be called, but I can't remember exactly, actually ended up being a negative for him because they were so fast and so convenient that they made swinging obsolete at times. And then it's that classic thing where, and he almost has a conversation with himself where he goes, well, then some people might argue, if you'd rather swing, why don't you just swing? And those people are right. I should just swing. So why am I complaining about it? I don't even know. He has that classic conversation. Just don't do the thing you don't want to do.
But I'm with him, though. We've talked about this with Starfield very recently, because it was like, why, if you don't want to use the fast travel and you can just fly your ship, just fly your ship.
Don't push the button.
Don't push the button. But it's insanely hard when you're standing in a cave with the thought of a 10-minute walk to not just push the button and go fast travel, please.
Oh, it is.
And so, I'm completely with Skill Up on the idea of, how do you resist using the wings? But then, to be fair, like at the same time, once you've done the swinging a lot, and they've done a lot apparently in this game as well to make the traversal just like more fun in a lot of ways as well. Like I think they've added new stuff, new flips, new, like you said, wings and everything, to just like make it a little bit more exciting. I don't think they need to do masses. I just think it needs to be a new, good, fleshed out story. One thing I did get tired with in Spider-Man was the repetitive nature of the enemies. Like you saw the same enemy types again and again. Apparently, they've done a lot of work on introducing new factions and new enemy types and things, which is all great. Yeah, like I said, one of the reasons I wanted to cover this week is because I'm excited to see how all of this falls apart over the course of the next week, and to see what people actually, like the public, say, and how they respond to what the critics have said, and how if people genuinely are where I'm at and where I think you're at, which is, hey man, we're perfectly happy where Spider-Man's at. We just want a new iteration on that. We're not looking for them to change everything and to make a complete new game.
I think it's going to be classic internet fare. I think I'm going to see it from both sides, right? There is a part of me, and I might be wrong here, I don't know if you feel the same way, that thinks that noise and the pushback might not be as big or as noticeable as we saw and felt with Starfield. Largely just because Starfield was, a long-awaited game, delayed a couple of times. It was seen as something of, not like a saving grace for Xbox at this stage. They're definitely not in dire straits to that degree. But it was a big name in the calendar for Xbox for a long, long time. As I said, a new IP from one of the most important and powerful studios that Microsoft and Xbox had acquired in recent years. You're talking about essentially the follow-up to a legacy that includes the Fallout series and the Elder Scrolls series. There's a lot riding on that, and I feel like there's a lot less riding on sequel to two already really fucking good games.
Yeah, very true.
They just feel like a known quantity, and yet some people on Twitter with Master Chief profile pictures will definitely say, "Oh my god, they just replaced the backpack collecting mini game with a spider bot collecting, open world objective, lazy game design 101." But it's like, It's just so easy to be reductive about this stuff. And it's very rare that I've ever played a recent Insomniac title and felt any desire to be reductive about the things that I could be reductive or pedantic about, because there's often so much spectacle at the front and center of their projects. And again, based on what I've seen so far, this doesn't appear to be any different.
No, agreed. And it's only, like I said, 4 days until we can find out for ourselves to see, the spectacle on our own TV screens as it comes out on Friday, the 20th. But you've mentioned them there. Should we talk about Xbox a little bit more? Should we get into our next story?
Yeah, let's do it.
This is the, I don't know if it was long awaited, but the inevitable signing off of Xbox's buying of Activision has finally gone through. It's finally been greenlit. It's been stamped. People have ticked the box. They've, I don't know however many ways you can say they've completed the deal. But yeah, they, as of the 13th of October, pop the cherry. There you go. As of the 13th of October, the deal's been finalised. And so now they are all one. They are joined. They are amalgamated.
The Dalai Lama's shown up. They're one with everything.
We knew this was coming, obviously. Well, we anticipated it was coming. It seemed like just a formality at this point. But we thought maybe rather than talk about this deal, talk about what's gone on with it. What might be fun to do is just to quickly go through all of the IPs that are now owned under the Microsoft umbrella, because they are now pretty epic. So I'm going to bore you with an entire list. I've got an entire long Kotaku list of all the different things that they own that we can sort of blitz through. If I start to get really boring, just tell me and I'll skip through some of them. So
I love this shit though.
Let's start with because they are now, right, let me get this right. They are under the umbrella now falls Activision, Blizzard, which obviously Activision Blizzard, King, Bethesda, ZeniMax, and then Xbox and Microsoft. So we're going to break it down because Kotaku have done a lovely job of breaking this down by each individual company. So under the Activision Blizzard umbrella, you've got 3D Ultra Pinball, Call of Duty, Call to Power, Crash Bandicoot, Dark Reign, Diablo, Extreme Paintball, Front Page Sports Baseball, Gabriel Knight, Geometry Wars, Guitar Hero, Gun, Hearthstone, Heavy Gear, Heretic, Heroes of the Storm, Hexen, Interstate 76, King's Quest, Laura Bow, Mystery Series, The Lost Vikings, Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX, Overwatch, Phantasmagoria, Pitfall, Police Quest, Prototype, Quest for Glory, SWAT, Singularity, Skylanders, Soldier of Fortune, Space Quest, Spyro, StarCraft, Tenchu, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, True Crime, Ultimate Soccer Manager, Warcraft, World of Warcraft, and Zork. That is just under the Activision Blizzard banner.
Yeah.
That is there anything that leaps out of you there? You're like,
well, the thing that leaps out of me beyond any individual game is how much Activision, on the strictly looking at their side of that split, really dropped the ball in allowing themselves to slowly, slip to the point where they're essentially just a Call of Duty machine. Because there are some fantastic franchises there, some of which died for very good reasons. Other of which died.
Gun. Shut up.
Well, Gun's a fantastic example of that. There's a lot of nostalgia tied to that name, but what do you do with it? Who do you go to? Again, in house now, first party, because that's how this is going to have to work for it to make sense. Who do you go to say in a post Red Dead Redemption 2 society, make Gun 2
Arcane.
And make it worth anything? But why would you get Arcane to make a gun game?
Let them save face. Make them get them to make a really good gun game.
But how are Arcane saving face by making a sequel to an average but largely forgettable Western third-person shooter?
It's fair.
I think that's the thing that's fascinating about all this. I've said numerous times in the past, I'd love Prototype to come back. How? I don't really know.
Do you know who would make a wicked Prototype game? Now, this is me obviously assuming it would be a good Prototype game, who aren't, unfortunately, part of Microsoft. Insomniac would make a sick Prototype game.
Yeah, they'd probably do it. They'd probably do a great job. In fact, they definitely do a great job. Who am I kidding? But you're right.
They've just released one, or they're just releasing one this week with some prototype type elements.
You're not wrong. But you're also right in saying that the first party element complicates it slightly more, and it feels like it's been so long since the fucking, I don't even know, like the Beanoxes and the Treyarchs of the world have been able to make something else that we don't really know kind of what do those teams want to make? What do they want to do? One thing I do think is that it's going to be incredibly funny when the next Crash Bandicoot and Spyro games come out and they are Xbox exclusives. It's going to be very funny to see PlayStation fans squirm as that happens. And the only other thing I've got to say, and it's slightly topical because it was supposedly mentioned by name by what's his face, the guy who's the Activision CEO who's staying on
Bobby
until
Kotick.
the new year, Bobby. At the meeting where all this was being discussed and confirmed, supposedly Guitar Hero was mentioned in that speech or in some, I don't know if it was in hushed
I would
tones.
love a guitar. We've talked about this on the show before, though. We've said we'd both love a Guitar Hero, a proper Guitar Hero returning as it should in modern day.
Totally, it would be incredible. Part of me really would be nervous that they do something really stupid about it with it, like they release a free-to-play Guitar Hero game with a tie-in Guitar Hero app, and you use your iPhone as like a touchscreen to push down the frets.
No, don't even say that.
And it uses like infrared to tell if you're strumming, and it's like no.
I get to play. So I have an app which scratches my Guitar Hero itch. But that's because I have an actual guitar, and on my app it listens to the sound, and you can and it works exactly like Guitar Hero does. But it just goes to I had so much fun playing those games and playing Rock Band back in the day, and we've said so many times surely the barriers to licensing and stuff can be overcome, especially in the modern world, especially when you look at music services and how they work. Like if you could get Spotify Guitar Hero or Amazon Music Guitar Hero, surely they could make something like that work.
Yeah. Guitar Hero, the last one, was it Guitar Hero Live, had some really interesting ideas where they would essentially create these fake TV channels, and what they would do on there was they would run music videos back to back, and you would play along with them, and it wasn't quite the full experience because it wasn't like they go through the process of getting the stems from the master and lowering and raising the volume for different things, but it was still kind of gave you a bit of a feeling of you were just playing a game and playing along to a song, and you would just be able to put on one of those channels and sit there and play songs that you hadn't bought or owned or anything like that. So that there's definitely something there. I don't know what it looks like, but yeah, I hope they figure it out. Also, get Vicarious Visions back together somehow and allow them to make a Tony Hawk's 3+4 remake. Bring back True Crime. I don't care which streets of wherever, streets of Atlanta. I don't give a shit. Just bring it back. Someone make a new Soldier of Fortune game so we can shoot people's limbs off again. Maybe swap.
I bring back Space Quest. I'm all about that.
Space Quest.
Do it,
okay.
But it's gonna be some point and click goodness. All right, let's move on to King because we're only part of the way through. That was a partial list, of course.
King is skippable.
King is not skippable. The reason King is not is because look,
I know one of these games and they're all called the fucking same thing.
Whilst there is a totally legitimate type of gaming, and these are gamers who play these games, so we are not going to skip King. Also, it's worth an absolute fortune, the amount of money they make off this stuff. So we'll blitz through it. It's a short one. It's a short list. Okay, so King, we're talking, it's obviously the mobile game developer, in case people aren't sure. So we're talking Alpha, I'm not going to say Saga for all of these because they all end in Saga. So Alpha Betty, Blossom Blast, Bubble Witch, Candy Crush, Diamond Digger, Farm Heroes, Hoop de Loop, Papa Pear, Paradise, Pepper Panic, Pet Rescue, Pyramid Solitaire, Rebel Riders, Scrubby Dubby, and Shuffle Cats. So shout out to those of the mobile gamers out there who love any of those. But no, let's quickly move on to Bethesda ZeniMax.
Wait, so hang on, no, Jonesy, you don't have a bold new vision for the future of Scrubby Dubby Saga?
I've never played Scrubby Dubby Saga. Why are they all sagas? That's what I don't get. Are they just long?
I don't know.
Is that what they're trying to say?
I'm more fascinated by the fact that Rebel Riders isn't a saga game, and what does that mean for them?
What does that mean? It's coming. The Rebel Riders saga is coming. That's what it means. But under the Bethesda ZeniMax banner, we've got Commander Keen, Deathloop, Dishonored, Doom, Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Hi-Fi Rush, Prey, Quake, Rage, Redfall, Starfield, The Evil Within, and Wolfenstein. That is a banging list.
Fantastic list.
Fantastic.
Made them all fantastic by the fact that Bethesda have done a decent job of keeping up to date with a lot of these IPs and making them relevant in the modern day. So we're not sat
That's
here
so
scratching
true.
our heads imagining what they would look like. We know what most of these things look like.
Kind of the opposite to Activision Blizzard. Like those are all super current IPs.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if they've had to go about it in weird ways, like, Prey was an example of like a title that was rebooted and something that didn't really look like the original. Rage, they made a sequel to Rage, but again, the amount of shared DNA with the original, questionable. In terms of what I'd like to see, the only thing I'm really desperate to see more, I want more Doom and I want more Wolfenstein, to be honest.
Yeah. But that's the thing. That those are coming as well. You won't have to wait forever to get those.
They haven't said the word Wolfenstein on stage for a long time at this point.
That's true, but then I've got to assume that's because they are going to soon.
And because Machine Games are making indie.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I forgot it was Machine Games that are making Indiana Jones. That we need to see more of friggin' Indiana Jones, man.
We definitely do.
Christ, stop keeping me waiting. All right, let's lastly go through the Xbox Microsoft umbrella themselves. We've got Age of Empires, Age of Mythology, Banjo-Kazooie, The Bard's Tale, Battletoads, Blinks the Time Sweeper, Blue Dragon, Conquer, Costume Quest, Crackdown, Crimson Skies, Fable, Forza, Gears of War, Halo, Killer Instinct, Kinect Sports, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Midtown Madness, Minecraft, Perfect Dark, Pillars of Eternity, Project Gotham Racing, Psychonauts, RC Pro Am, Rise of Nations, Sabermen, State of Decay, Thunder, Viva Pinata, Wasteland, and Zoo Tycoon. So another not as epic, but very good list. I mean, shout out to Killer Instinct. Where's my modern Killer Instinct game? Come on.
Isn't something happening soon with Killer Instinct? Isn't it coming back?
Oh,
I think something. I think something might be happening. I feel like there was a Killer Instinct headline inside the past 6 months. Do you know I would love to see. There are some. They're kind of. It's interesting if we talk about Bethesda as the sort of publisher that's been able to keep a lot of their IPs relatively up to date. Activision is the one that's let a lot of them lapse. Xbox are the ones that are kind of in the middle on some of that stuff, where either recently or still to come, they have taken things like Battletoads got rebooted a couple of years ago.
Of course, yeah.
Fable's in the process of getting rebooted. Microsoft Flight Simulator technically got rebooted. Perfect Dark is in the process of being rebooted. We've got sequels coming for State of Decay, and presumably Halo and Gears are going to keep going, and so on and so forth. I'd love to see someone have another crack at Crackdown when the time is right. I don't know when the time will be right, but I hope that time does come. And I think Banjo-Kazooie and Viva Pinata are the two that stand out to me as kind of things that have been MIA for longer than they probably should have been, given how high quality even the most recent outputs were. I think it was Viva Pinata. I don't know if they went beyond Viva Pinata 2. And then Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts was a really interesting direction for that franchise. So, yeah, there's a lot of potential there.
It is. Does it make you feel a little bit sad when you read when I read out all those games and you sort of think, how do we not have a new title coming for like every single one of these? Not specifically Microsoft, but like all of the ones that we've just been through. Obviously, there are some that we know there are ones coming, but it does feel like there's a lot of IP which is sort of left on the shelf to some degree.
Dormant. Yeah, it does. I guess though that like the more charitable way of looking at that is that it's sort of untapped or as yet unfulfilled potential. Areas for Xbox to move into.
Or maybe for a reason. It's like they don't want to do anything with it at the moment.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think anyone's looking at Blinks the Time Sweeper and saying, "Oh God,
why?"
Like we need more Blink." Maybe hey, some people probably are. They're probably on Twitter and they probably are being ironic and trying to pass it off as being genuine. But I don't know. I still think it's, even when you look at like what we know we've got coming in the near or even kind of long term future, where things like Elder Scrolls start to come back into the mix. I think it's a really healthy. I think it's a really healthy mix of known quantities and things that I'm excited to see more of as part of a continuation of what we've had recently, and things, especially when you factor in some of those long-time lapsed Activision IPs that are just like really, ready to be kind of completely reimagined in a way that I hope is really exciting. And like I mentioned, Fable, and I know we haven't seen much of it, but Perfect Dark and stuff like that. There are examples of Xbox like looking at things and saying, let's give them to a studio that let's give Fable to a studio that makes open world racing games and say like, hey, we want to see what you guys would do with this blank of this blank of canvas, but in this very particular context. And I hope that that kind of thinking or logic is applied to the Activision stuff as well. And as you kind of mentioned with Arcane, that there can be mixing and matching here. That like a Bethesda studio works on an Activision property, and an Xbox, a part of the Xbox Game Studios works on a whatever, however.
Surely
it works
that's
out.
the benefit of having so many developers under your roof, right? Is that you can do that.
But from my experience, different sort of families of companies see it in different ways. Some people see it as kind of like the perfect opportunity for just pure collaboration and having access to as many different people from as many different sort of like backgrounds and sort of like talent brackets as possible working on any given title. And sometimes companies find it slightly neater to allow the companies that they own to largely operate autonomously and keep their own identity and culture and branding and IP and stuff like that. So it's just gonna be an interesting part of how Xbox go. But the fact that they do kind of consider it that there to be these three pillars, like Bethesda and ZeniMax have been kept separate. Like when we go into E3, it's the Xbox and Bethesda showcase, and I wouldn't be surprised if next year it's the, assuming things are ready to be shown, Xbox, Bethesda, Activision showcase. They'll probably come up with a more tighter way of presenting it. But like there was nothing about the way Bethesda were acquired or any of Bethesda subsidiaries, like Arcane, as you mentioned, or Machine Games, that's been treated in the same way that Playground have been treated, or Undead Labs, or Ninja Theory, where they are now just very much Xbox Game Studios,
Yes.
So they're still going to have that separation, but it's going to be interesting to see what the collaboration and kind of sharing is between them, in spite of the fact that their pillars are very, been kept apart.
I've got a final question then for Xbox.
Yeah.
When does COD come to Game Pass?
Man, that's a really tough one.
I want to say we know from sort of like leaks and insider stuff that I think it's 8 years that COD is still going to be coming to PlayStation 4. Was that what they said finally? The thing that we heard.
I can't remember. Jim Ryan did sign something in the end, didn't he?
I believe so. Yeah.
I don't know if it's Jim himself, but like the figurative Jim Ryan,
yeah.
Soon to be former head of SAE, I guess. Yeah, I can't remember what the length of that deal was, and I also can't remember if and when Phil made any actual promises around the future of, because I know that one thing that happened quite recently is they've been quite clear to say that games like Modern Warfare 3, which is the Call of Duty game coming out next month, and Diablo 4, which came out on most platforms in the summer, but only arrived on Steam, I think, this past week or something like that, are not going to come to Game Pass anytime soon. Like they're still trying to protect the full scale premium purchases that are no doubt taking place across titles like that. But like at some point it will happen. I just don't know exactly what it looks like. Like, is it a case of next year's Call of Duty game is just on Game Pass day one? Or is it a case that Microsoft and Xbox just take advantage of the position they're in with regards to that next Call of Duty when it comes to things like obviously giving themselves marketing rights? That's not even a factor anymore. They're marketing their own game now, but like they can do what PlayStation have just done and have exclusive windows for betas. They can have like a bunch of exclusive rewards. You can have additional perks or things like that. Like if you're playing Call of Duty as an active Game Pass subscriber, you might get certain skins given to you every now. Like that, there's a lot of ways that you can leverage what Call of Duty is in the modern age. Even at the moment, this year there's a £100 version of the game, and one of the perks of it is 1 week early access to the campaign. What if that was a perk of being a Game Pass subscriber rather than a perk of buying a £100 version of a game? It's going to be really interesting to see how they leverage that stuff, because I'd imagine there's a part of Phil Spencer that doesn't want to take what is more often than not, year on year, the best-selling home console game in the world, and essentially make it free on two platforms, two of its three platforms. So we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. I just think it's going to be a slightly more complicated answer than Call of Duty's on Game Pass now. The thing that it will be different is I think probably what they might now call legacy Call of Duty titles. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if the Activision backlog slowly starts to drip feed onto some version of either console or PC Game Pass or both in the coming weeks and months, and we'll sort of get a better idea. I don't even know if the servers are still on for some of those old games. Maybe they start dropping like campaign only versions of old CODs onto Game Pass and shit like that. I just don't know.
That would be seriously cool. I think a lot of people would be into that if they did. But then it does get interesting. Like, it will be funny to think of, when everything's sort of all said and done. Whenever you go onto your PlayStation and you play any COD game, Warzone, you do any battle passes, anything like that, Microsoft are getting a slice of all that money, which is
yeah,
an interesting angle. Talking about Sony, talking about PlayStation. Let's move away from Microsoft because Sony have now announced officially that a smaller, sleeker PS5 is going to be launching next month. So that's going to be coming out in November. They've officially announced it now after we did have some leaks earlier in the year sort of saying something was coming. The smaller console will be the same spec as the current ones that are on store shelves at the moment. So it's not going to be a less powerful unit, but it is going to be 30% smaller, which is nice because the PlayStation 5 is a little bit of a tubby beast. So it would be nice having it a little bit slimmer. With a detachable disc drive as well, what I believe, which is what I want, because I know my PlayStation 5 is currently got a bricked disc drive.
Oh, right, I forgot about that. Yeah, so for anyone that hasn't seen it, like the way it works is if you imagine the kind of the big white panels that are sit on either side of the PlayStation 5, those now have kind of like a slice through the middle of them almost. So you can detach part of, but not all of, that panel. And if you have the disc, well, no matter which of these versions you buy, if you take off like the lower panel on the side of it that has the disc drive, you can physically remove the disc drive and then put a flat panel back on, and it becomes the digital version. Same goes for vice versa. If you buy the digital version and then want to buy a Blu-ray disc drive in the future, the Blu-ray disc drive will be sold separately, albeit at a greater collective cost than just buying a version with a disc drive to begin with. But at least it gives people the option. Like, if you buy a digital version of this, slim console, and then your grandma buys you a physical game in the future, you don't have to like throw it away or give it to a mate. You're like, oh, well, maybe I'll buy a disc drive one day and I'll actually be able to play this. But yeah, you're right. The fact that this is something that is going to, over time, replace current versions of the PS5 as opposed to sit alongside it suggests that like this isn't the PS5 Slim as opposed to the PS5. This is just a new PS5 that is 30% slimmer and has a detachable disk drive and a slightly bigger hard drive, or SSD rather.
Which is, I think, it's almost weird calling it a Slim. It's just like it's effectively a slightly better modular version of the PlayStation 5. And if, like you said, if you can buy the digital version and then add the disc drive later on, that's fantastic for them, because obviously once you've bought a PlayStation digital, you can't do that at the moment. And so for them offering you the ability to add on, I think it's $80 in the US, a Blu-ray drive, it just gives them an extra option to sell an extra piece of kit. And yeah, if it breaks, you can take it off and buy a new one, which will be very nice for people like me that have a busted drive that doesn't currently work at the moment.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a way that you, even as someone who owns a disc version of the OG PlayStation 5 with a broken disc drive, can buy just the separate disc drive and like plug it in
externally, like with a cable.
Externally somehow. Like, is there like a weird like way of plugging it in via USB or something? I don't know, but
I'm not sure.
It'd be nice if you had an $80 solution to your problem rather than a $450 solution to your problem.
Well, realistically, I think I can send mine back and get it, and hopefully get it fixed, which is what I need to do. But it's just like a matter of just being bothered to buy a box and put it in it and send it off, which is something that I do need to do. Something else we should also mention is that the new Slim PS5 will come with 1 terabyte of internal storage, which is an increase from the 800 gig that the original models came with. I mean, I suppose that's 1 Call of Duty, so you could chuck on there.
Actually, when you put it that way, that's actually not so bad.
Is it not so bad? That to me is like just means that games are too big. But I suppose, hey, look, we've got to deal with that, right?
You're right. Games are too big. That is true, regardless of how you slice it.
But no, I mean, yeah, it totally makes sense. They're releasing this, a few years after the original release. It's not actually changing anything. It's just making it a little bit smaller, and totally makes sense. Like, yeah. Why the hell not? And obviously, we were talking recently about the fact that Xbox aren't going to be doing this. They're not going to be releasing any interim models or any interim versions of their consoles.
There's going to be that one refresh, apparently, in the leaks, right? The one that, again, it's like the same thing where it's circular, cylindrical now instead of a box. Also has a bigger hard drive and faster Wi-Fi.
Okay, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, no, sorry. There's not going to do a Pro version. That's what we were talking about, weren't they?
But yeah,
I'm getting myself mixed up.
The weird thing is, so that's Xbox are going to do that next year, but the rumor is still that PlayStation will have a Pro next year. So that's where, we will get a noticeable difference in hardware power.
Well, then that puts this in a little bit of a strange, not strange at all for Sony. Like, release a Slim right before Christmas 23. Right, the year before you release a Pro the following year. It totally makes sense for them, but at the same time, like, it's a little bit frustrating because as someone who, potentially might need to purchase a new PlayStation 5 at some point in the near future, would I wait for the Pro? Do I want to pull the trigger on the Slim? Like, it gets a little bit dicey.
As weird as it sounds, like, I actually think that's why calling this a PS5 Slim is really unhelpful, because it makes it sound like a new product.
When it's
the mentality, I think, people need to have is it's not. There's a reason that before we sat down to record this podcast, you didn't know this existed. Like, PlayStation aren't going to advertise this as a new product. Half the time when consoles like this come about, it's because components that are used in the manufacturing of these consoles have become smaller and become cheaper. And sometimes these are just a more either A, efficient, or B, cost-effective way to manufacture these consoles. It's just to switch things up. Same thing happened on the PS4. Do you remember where the original PS4 was like, it was had much sharper, harsher edges, and it had like a gloss layer and a matte layer. And then they reworked the PS4 to be, again, much smaller. And that was when they made it all, not quite, like basically all matte, and no gloss. Yeah. And it kind of had the rounded edges instead. And it was like, that was at the same time with the PS4 Pro, which was the triple stack, and then the regular PS4 was a double stack. And it was like,
the one I always remember about that was the PlayStation 3, where the original unit, they made a loss on every one. And then they rejigged it to do a version which then lost its ability to do backwards compatibility because they changed hardware for software to save money or something. I believe.
Were there 3 PlayStation 3s in the end?
Yeah, I think so, because there was the original, then there was the one which, like I said, was the change with the software hardware, and then there was a smaller version, right?
And then there was that final one, which was called the Super Slim, which was where the disc drive was like a thing that you would slide along the very top.
Right.
I don't know if you ever saw that.
I did. I didn't own one. Yeah, no, I remember that. That was a weird-looking unit, the PlayStation 3, now that I think back.
Yeah. It's funny, I've reminded myself now that people will began calling the original PS3 the PS3 Fat.
The PS3, is that what they called it?
But yeah, there were 3 different PS3s in the end. The first one was the fat all gloss one with the Spider-Man font on the top, and then it was the slim one that was the same version, but it was the same shape, but it was all matte and said PS3 on the top. And then finally, it was the one with the slidey top cover with the ridges in it. Weird.
I thought one day I'll dig out all of my consoles and maybe I'll put them all on display like a little PlayStation museum.
Oh man,
I think I've got obviously PlayStation 1, I've got a PlayStation 2, I've got 2 versions of the PlayStation 3, I've got the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 4 Pro, and then obviously the 5. I'm missing a few, but
that's cool though, man. I'm jealous. I've sold all of mine. The only like console that I have still that I don't use is a PS4 Pro.
Right. I sold my PSP. I remember I sold that. back in
Oh,
the day.
actually, I've still got my Vita, I guess.
There you go.
Um, Waiting for that battery to explode on me.
I want to say when I sold my PSP, my brother was horrified because I think I sold it to get a PlayStation 3, and I think I got £200 for it with all my games, and he was like, "Do you have any idea how much Mum and Dad spent on that?" And I was like, I think when they got it, it was like 500 quid with like all the games and stuff that I
Yeah,
got for it.
but
Crazy
hang on a
expensive.
second. Your brother pointed out the reason why that's not a problem. Do you have any idea how much your mum and dad spent on that? If your mum and dad spent the money and you got it at the end, it's pure profit on the books.
That's very true. And then I got a PlayStation 3 out of it. So
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
hey ho. Uh, I think we've got time for one more story. Shall we get
Sure, why
stuck
not?
into a cheeky little story about a company that could actually change the face of gaming, Jamie, forevermore, because they have got a lot of money. I'm talking about Disney, because CEO of Disney, Bob Iger's deputies, are apparently pushing for him to transform Disney from the Goliath it already is into a gaming Goliath, and would possibly through the purchase of a existing very large company. So apparently, at the moment, obviously, we know that Disney license a lot of their IP out. They get a lot of games made around Disney-owned assets, like Marvel and things like that. But they think the legs in Disney and gaming is through doing it themselves.
And they might be right, like I don't I'm not good enough at this, not worldly enough to know kind of like what the bottom line looks like from a licensee's perspective, and the kind of value inherent to the deals like the ones they've signed a number of with EA. Obviously, EA, they signed that Star Wars deal with them that's resulted in the rebooted Battlefront series and then rolling into the Jedi series. They've now opened that up a little bit so that Ubisoft are obviously having a crack at Star Wars alongside all of that stuff still taking place. Then obviously they've also got a number of Marvel deals with EA at the moment. We've talked in recent times about the Iron Man game that Motive are working on, following their work on the Dead Space remake earlier on. And then there's a game based on Black Panther and a bunch of stuff going on. But it's been a bit hit and miss for them. And I guess the thing I'm not sure is I presume, for the most part, as a licensee, they kind of avoid a lot of the risks inherent to a game sort of like performing quite poorly. I imagine they make a deal where they essentially say, "Hey, for a certain amount of money, EA will give you the rights to make a title based on this." Or better example is Square Enix. Like, to Disney kind of like cash a check when Marvel's Avengers gets made because they're like, "Yeah, you give us 50 million, we'll give you all the rights you need to make whatever game you want to
You've got
make."
to think so, right?
Um, or are they more hands-on? Like, are there requirements to, like, I'd imagine EA go through a lot of rigmarole to kind of protect the integrity of their brands, and especially with something like
Sure.
Star Wars, it's like every sound effect has to be the right sound effect and stuff like that.
But
So
then
I
again,
don't know how. Yeah,
wouldn't you just tie that? Would think that they would tie that to the licensing arrangement. So, for example, you say, okay, you can use Star Wars
true.
for $100 million, but you have to sign this 3,000-page document which says that you will stick to all of this, and at every stage, our quality control experts are going to come in and make sure you're sticking to the. Otherwise, you violate the contract and you have to pay us an extra, whatever. You've got to also imagine that they, as it's third party making something for them, that they can take out insurance specifically to aimed at protecting themselves to some degree. So this we're talking about this because it comes from a Bloomberg article. I think they've specifically talked about the fact that Disney could maybe buy EA, so as a very quick way to get into the business.
Right.
One thing that's interesting about that is I wonder if actually that wouldn't make any difference to anybody anywhere, because they wouldn't do anything different. They would just, almost like with Marvel, Disney buying Marvel didn't seemingly make any difference, apart from we just got a shitload more Marvel stuff.
Yeah, I suppose the difference it potentially makes is to what EA are currently doing. How did Disney feel about EAFC 24?
Yeah.
That becomes the question. Do they look at that and we're like, actually, this is great, but these people could be making a Mandalorian game or something.
See, I don't
You
think
know,
they do that. My initial reaction is if Disney get into gaming, we're going to see all of those Disney brands. So yeah, Star Wars, Marvel, Pixar, all those other Disney properties. We're going to suddenly see the market flooded like we are with like Loki Series 10 and Wanda Vision game or whatever. But actually, maybe they don't do any of that. Maybe they just say, just crack on, EA. We're just going to sit above you and get the profits from your football games. Like, do they actually try and push their assets
good
down
question.
the line?
Good question. Because I mean, you'd imagine Disney would be somewhat incentivized to like make sure that their IP sort of like live on through that catalog of games. But when you look at the actual quotes from the Bloomberg article, the idea of becoming a gaming giant, it's not reliant on everything they do hinging around their IPs. I think it would just there'd be a nice amount of synergy to that. So I don't know. It's really hard to say. But then I'm also slightly discouraged by something like this, just because I think that generally speaking, licensing out the rights to these sort of properties and being able to approach or talk to a number of different developers and getting different looks and different ideas and different pitches is what I think creates a sense of variety that stops these IPs getting as stale as they otherwise could. And leads to a better situation for gamers. Like we were talking earlier about, when we were talking about some of the directions that things like Blade Runner and Tron are going in. I'm not suggesting that Disney are ever going to start, taking pitches from, independent developers on what could be like relatively low scale or low budget projects. But at the same time, I don't know, when you look at something like Star Wars, like yes, Battlefront was a bit of a disappointment, but the fact that we did get Battlefront and Battlefront lived alongside Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, which lived alongside Star Wars Squadrons, which is now going to live alongside I forget the name of it, the one that Ubisoft are making that they sort of like fully unveiled during the summer. Like again, as game players, we benefit from that variety, and that variety is enabled by the fact that everyone and anyone who of a certain size or a certain scale or having a certain track record is able to approach Disney and pitch and say, here's where we think we should make a Star Wars game. And I think keeping that a little bit more fast and loose is what makes things more fresh. And as soon as Disney go, entirely internal, entirely in-house, they're no longer they want to become the gaming giant. They don't work with any of those other companies or studios or publishers anymore. They want to keep their own. They want to keep the licenses in-house as well. And all of a sudden, it becomes like a thing of, you don't get me wrong, you get some very interesting questions, which like, what do BioWare do with, insert Disney IP here? That's a question I wouldn't mind seeing answered, but I also want to see them continue to make that Mass Effect game they're making.
Yeah.
And I guess technically the Dragon Age game they're making too, but I don't know, I'm not holding my breath.
It's weird because it's almost like a double-edged sword, right? Because you say, okay, who do EA own that can do a good job of Disney-owned properties? And it becomes interesting when effectively, I mean, I don't know how it works, but you've got to imagine at some point those companies turn around and go, oh, wow, so do we now have free reign? Just we can pick any Disney property we want and like pitch a game for it. And there's not really any barriers to us making it. But yeah, what do you do then when you say actually you want to see a game made by a non-EA property like producing a Disney game? You're not going to see it, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
Not that they're buying EA, but this is what's obviously been speculated upon by Bloomberg. And the fact that CEO, as we said, Bob Iger, has been sort of instrumental in buying a lot of big studios for Disney over the years. We're talking Pixar in 2006, Lucasfilm in 2012, Marvel in 2009.
I mean, and those three, in some respects, like changed, have defined the modern face of Disney, right?
I've realised as well how stupid it was that I said that doesn't mean we're going to get loads and loads of Disney Marvel sort of games. Of course it does. Look at what they've done over the last sort of like since those acquisitions. It's just going to be like game spam, which I don't know. Maybe that's not a bad thing.
Maybe
it's not a good thing.
I don't think it's a good thing.
If you thought it was bad being inundated with like series after series, what's going to be when we're on like the 5th version of a bloody, I don't even know, Little Mermaid game that no one asked for?
Oh God, yeah, and that's like a throwback to like the 90s and early 2000s where licensed games ruled the roost because that was what made kids pick up boxes off store shelves was recognizable, IPs and franchises. And the
Aladdin,
quality,
Lion King,
yeah,
big
the quality of
games.
the games didn't fall by the wayside because you didn't have a bunch of nerds refreshing Metacritic when the Aladdin review embargo dropped to find out if it was good or not. You went to the shop with your parents, you saw Aladdin, and say, "Can I have Aladdin, please? Because I like the film."
Mate,
And it was really as simple as that.
92 Aladdin on the SNES. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's funny. I played an Aladdin game as well, but it was the PS1 game. So I'm on the weirdest side of the Aladdin argument. I know that much.
I don't know if we need that going forward. I really
Well,
don't.
it will never get quite back to that unless they kind of take shortcuts by focusing on intentionally sort of like let's call them B games or mobile games and so on and so forth. Like that is one thing about the potential for gaming spam is that it's not as easy as it was. Where like there's a reason that publishers whose catalogs focus too heavily on licensed games died when they did. THQ obviously coming to mind. I don't think it'll ever go quite back to that because games are too expensive and take too long to make. For a shovelware Little Mermaid game to exist, but there will be some equally as horrifying equivalent, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, it'll happen somehow, but remains to be seen how it'll work. But there we go. Disney like to buy stuff, and why would they not want to get into the biggest media fragments or media area there is in video gaming? You've got to imagine it's a move that they want to make at some point.
Oh yeah, I'm sure every time someone reminds them that the games industry generates more revenue than the film industry and the music industry combined, they go, "Huh, interesting."
Get me my checkbook.
Money, you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Although I suppose because they're not a publisher at the moment, but you've got to imagine that that's going to trip some alarm bells for monopoly agencies around the world saying, hold on, Disney's snapping up a lot of media franchises in all these different areas. Like, I wonder if that's going to cause a problem.
I don't see it. No, they own a lot of IP. They own a lot of IP, but none of those IP really are like super significant yet in gaming terms. And by buying EA, I don't think that'd be an issue.
It gets to this point where
it's my totally unqualified opinion.
No, yeah, I have no idea. It's when it just sometimes seems a bit like there's a lot of very, very large companies that own kind of everything. And if you had Disney owning EA, you'd be like, oh, that's big. But
that would be the only significant gaming property they owned.
Sure, but then obviously everything that falls under them, so Star Wars, Marvel, all those they make games attached to those IPs. You've got to imagine that then they all get brought in under the Disney umbrella. So would they then be? I don't know. I don't know enough about this sort of thing. I don't know how they work that out.
Me neither. We'll get a lawyer to guest on the next episode of the podcast.
That'll be pretty cool. Yeah, if you're a lawyer out there, why don't you reach out?
Any lawyers in the chat?
And you can reach out on YouTube or on X. We're at SuperShow Pod. And you could drop us a little note on Discord as well. You can join there for as little as $2. Join our Patreon. Or Patreon. Oh my God, why can I never get that right? Over at patreon.com. Thank you, Jamie, so much for joining me this week. Thank you, everybody in the chat who's been chatting away. Chris popped up at one point. Hot Panic was in the chat. Shout out to Chris. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you to everybody else as well. Thank you to our patrons. Thank you to people watching, to our subscribers, and anyone who just drops a like or drops a comment or just comes by to listen to us, to see us, to say hello. It's been another fantastic week of talking about gaming news. Even though it was pretty dry, Jamie, we managed to make a show out of it. There you go.
We managed to make a show out of it, and next week we'll be able to do a post Spider-Man discussion to some degree. Maybe not post Spider-Man, but we'll have
an autopsy of the week of release.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the 3 days of release, because we would have had the weekend
with some hands-on experience as well.
Hopefully.
Also, I don't want to speak too soon. This might be my last podcast from this room.
Yes. Yeah, we'll be excited.
Depending on how things work out.
We'll have to stay tuned to keep connected, see what's going on.
Yeah.
See. Maybe you won't get to play Spider-Man because you'll be too busy.
Honestly,
shifting stuff.
I actually don't know what to like. Spider-Man's coming out at the worst possible time for me. Without being too indiscreet, I have no idea what I'm gonna do.
Mate,
I wish I had the willpower to just leave it till I'm on the other side, but I don't know if I do.
that'll be like the first thing you plug in will be your TV, your PlayStation. You'll be there, like just boxes around you, having not unpacked anything, just playing Spider-Man.
Fuck the rest of it. Can wait, you know.
Well, no, thank you very much, everybody. So we'll see you next week